Have you ever met someone so talented yet so full of themselves that it overshadows everything good about them? Imagine a doctor brilliant, respected, and admired by many, but with a heart as cold as the stethoscope around his neck. This is Dr. Armin. To his wealthy patients, he's a lifesaver, a miracle worker. But to anyone who doesn't fit his idea of worthy, he's dismissive, condescending, and, frankly, heartless. Dr. Armin built his reputation on skill and success, but not without a cost. His clinic boasts luxurious interiors, catering to clients who can afford his exorbitant fees. His mantra, if you can't pay, don't stay. While his peers might call it practical, the truth is far darker. He sees wealth as a measure of value, not just in his practice but in people's lives. But here's the twist: what happens when someone walks into his clinic who doesn't meet his standards but holds the power to change his life forever? Stick with us, because by the end of this story, you'll see how even the most arrogant hearts can be humbled in the most unexpected ways. Keep watching to uncover the surprising twist that turns this doctor's world upside down and teaches us all a lesson about compassion and humility. It was an ordinary day at Dr. Armin's clinic, bustling with the usual flow of affluent patients. In walked a woman who immediately stood out, not because of her looks, but because of her simplicity. She wore a modest dress, slightly faded, and carried a small bag clutched tightly in her hands. Her face bore the signs of someone who had faced more struggles than comfort, yet her eyes were steady, determined. She approached the receptionist, speaking in a soft voice. "I need to see Dr. Armin," she said, her tone polite but urgent. The receptionist hesitated, glancing at the woman's attire, before nervously directing her to wait. When the doctor finally saw her, his reaction was swift and cold. "Do you have any idea how much a consultation here costs?" he asked, his tone sharp and dismissive. The woman paused, her discomfort evident, but she stood firm. "Please, doctor, I'm in pain. I need your help." Dr. Armin scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "I'm sure there are plenty of clinics that cater to your situation," he said, gesturing dismissively. "This isn't one of them." His words hit her like a slap, but she didn't argue. Instead, she quietly nodded, thanked him, and left the room, her shoulders heavy but her dignity intact. What Dr. Armin didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this woman wasn't just any patient. Her story, her identity, and her purpose for being there would soon shake the very foundation of everything he believed. But for now, he remained oblivious, as arrogant as ever, convinced he'd done nothing wrong. And just like that, the stage was set for a reckoning no one saw coming. Keep watching, because the quiet strength of this woman will soon turn into a storm that changes everything. As the door closed behind the woman, Dr. Armin leaned back in his chair, muttering under his breath. "Some people just don't understand boundaries," he scoffed, picking up his phone to scroll through messages from his wealthy clients. In his mind, the encounter was already forgotten, a minor interruption in an otherwise perfect day. But for the woman, it was a moment she would never forget. Walking out of the clinic, she replayed the doctor's dismissive words in her head. Her heart ached, not just from the pain she had come to treat, but from the humiliation of being judged solely by her appearance. Yet, she didn't cry. Instead, she walked with quiet resolve, a plan forming in her mind. Back in the clinic, whispers began circulating among the staff. The receptionist, who had witnessed the exchange, turned to a nurse. "Did you see how he treated her? She looked like she really needed help," she said, her voice tinged with guilt. The nurse sighed. "You know how he is. If you don't look the part, you don't get his attention." They shook their heads, sharing a moment of silent disapproval. It wasn't the first time they had seen Dr. Armin dismiss someone in need, but this time, something about the woman lingered in their minds. And bothered by the quiet dissent around him, Dr. Armin carried on with his day. His focus remained on the patients he deemed worthy of his time, those who paid in full and came with glowing recommendations. Little did he know, his world was about to be turned upside down. The woman he had just dismissed was no ordinary patient. She was someone who had fought her way to success despite countless obstacles. And soon, she would remind Dr. Armin and everyone around him that compassion is the true measure of greatness. Stay tuned, because the next chapter of this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power, privilege, and respect. As the day went on, the tension in the clinic became palpable. While Dr. Armin seemed unfazed, the staff couldn't stop talking about what had happened. In the break room, a small group of nurses gathered, their voices low but filled with frustration. "It's not the first time he's done this," one of them said, shaking her head. "He only cares about money." That poor woman didn't even get a chance to explain her condition. Another nurse chimed in. She didn't look like someone who was just wasting time. There was something about her like she didn't belong here, but not in the way he thinks. The receptionist, still visibly upset, spoke up. "You know what's ironic? He always talks about professionalism and reputation, but what about basic decency? It's embarrassing to watch." Their quiet conversation was interrupted by Dr. Armin himself, who walked into the room with his usual air of superiority. "Is this what I'm paying you for, gossiping?" he asked, his tone sharp. The nurses exchanged glances but said nothing, knowing better than to challenge him directly. Despite his words, the seed of doubt seemed to plant itself in the minds of his colleagues. They had long admired his skill but had grown weary of his arrogance. This latest incident had left them questioning not just his attitude but the very culture of the clinic. Meanwhile, the woman's quiet departure from the clinic had sparked a ripple effect. Some staff members began to wonder who she was and why she seemed so composed despite the humiliating encounter. "Mark my words," the receptionist whispered later, "this isn't the last we'll see of her." And she was right. What no one in the clinic realized was that the woman had come there with a purpose far greater than they could imagine. The reckoning they had been quietly hoping for was closer than they thought. Keep watching, because the story is about to take a turn that will leave even Dr. Armin speechless. Far away from the sterile walls of Dr. Armin's clinic, the woman returned to her modest office. The room was simple, yet it carried an air of purpose. On the walls hung certificates of achievement and photos of smiling faces, people whose lives had been touched by her work. This was Maya Singh, a name unknown to Dr. Armin but one that carried immense weight in the world of social change. Maya wasn't just a struggling patient. She was the CEO of a renowned charitable organization dedicated to healthcare reform. Her journey hadn't been easy. Born into poverty, she had faced countless obstacles on her way to success. From working odd jobs to funding her own education, Maya had clawed her way up, determined to make a difference. Her organization focused on providing medical care to underserved communities, bridging the gap for those who couldn't afford it. Over the years, Maya had built partnerships with hospitals, doctors, and policymakers, ensuring that no one was denied the right to treatment. But despite her accomplishments, she never lost touch with her roots or the struggles of the people she served. Recently, Maya had heard whispers about a growing divide in healthcare, how some clinics prioritized wealth over well-being. She had decided to see it for herself, stepping into the shoes of an ordinary patient. Her visit to Dr. Armin's clinic wasn't random, it was deliberate. She wanted to experience firsthand the barriers people faced when they didn't fit the mold of a profitable patient. What she hadn't expected was the sheer disdain she encountered. The coldness of Dr. Armin's words replayed in her mind, not as an insult but as a confirmation of the very issues she had been fighting to change. Maya's resolve deepened. This wasn't just about her, it was about everyone who had ever been dismissed, judged, or ignored because they couldn't afford to be seen. Little did Dr. Armin know, the woman he had turned away wasn't going to disappear quietly. Maya Singh was about to show him and the entire clinic that true power doesn't come from wealth or status, but from the courage to stand up for what's right. The next part of this story will bring you closer to the moment where Maya's quiet strength collides with Dr. Armin's arrogance, and the results will be nothing short of transformative. Don't miss it. A few days later, the clinic was abuzz with activity, but not for the usual reasons. An important email had arrived from the hospital's management, and it was all anyone could talk about. The subject line read, "Special visit, new leadership announcement." Dr. Armin skimmed the email. His interest piqued. The message explained that the hospital's new CEO would be visiting clinics and departments to evaluate their operations. This was no ordinary inspection, this was a chance to impress someone at the very top. Finally, Dr. Armin said to himself, smirking, "Someone who will appreciate what I bring to the table." In his mind, this was an opportunity to showcase his expertise and the elite clientele he attracted. He instructed his staff to prepare for the visit meticulously. The clinic needed to sparkle, the charts needed to be perfect, and, most importantly, his reputation needed to shine. The staff, however, felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They had heard whispers about the new CEO, a visionary leader with a hands-on approach and a deep understanding of healthcare inequities. The nurses speculated that this visit might bring long overdue changes. As the day of the visit approached, The tension in the air grew thicker. Dr. Armin spent hours rehearsing his pitch, imagining how he would highlight his success. This clinic is a model of excellence, he told himself, envisioning accolades from the new CEO. What he didn't know was that the CEO wasn't coming to be impressed. She was coming to make changes. And she wasn't a stranger, she was someone who had already experienced his so-called excellence firsthand. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything Dr. Armin believed about his practice and his values. Stay with us, because the moment of truth is just around the corner, and it's going to be unforgettable. The day of the visit arrived, and the clinic was polished to perfection. The staff wore their best uniforms, the reception area sparkled, and Dr. Armin was dressed in his finest suit, exuding confidence. He stood near the entrance, waiting to greet the new CEO with his signature charm. When the door opened, everyone turned to look. In walked a woman with a commanding presence, her professional attire tailored to perfection. She moved with quiet authority, her eyes scanning the room as if taking in every detail. The staff whispered among themselves, recognizing her from photos and articles. This was Maya Singh, the new CEO of the hospital. Dr. Armin stepped forward, his practiced smile in place. "Welcome to our clinic, Ms. Singh. It's an honor to have you here." Maya paused, meeting his gaze. For a moment, there was silence. Then, with a calm but pointed tone, she said, "Dr. Armin, it's interesting to see you again." Confusion flickered across his face. "Again?" he asked, his voice faltering slightly. "Yes," she replied, her eyes steady. "I was here a few days ago, seeking treatment." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You dismissed me." The room fell silent. The staff exchanged shocked glances, and Dr. Armin's face turned pale. He stammered, "I didn't realize. You weren't, I mean." Maya held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "No need to explain, doctor. Your actions spoke louder than any words ever could." The tension in the room was palpable as Maya turned to address the staff. "I came here not as a CEO, but as an ordinary patient, to understand how people are treated when they don't fit the mold of your ideal client. What I experienced was disappointing, to say the least." Dr. Armin stood frozen, his confidence shattered. This wasn't the meeting he had imagined. Instead of accolades, he was facing the consequences of his arrogance. Maya's voice softened but remained firm. "Today, I'm here as your CEO, and I'm here to make changes. Because no one deserves to be turned away when they're in need of care." The staff looked at her with admiration, while Dr. Armin seemed to shrink under the weight of her words. What would happen next would define not just his future, but the culture of the clinic itself. Don't go anywhere, the next part of this story is where the real transformation begins, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. As the initial shock settled, Dr. Armin scrambled to regain his composure. "Ms. Singh," he began, forcing a smile, "I assure you, this must be a misunderstanding. I have the utmost respect for all patients, regardless of their circumstances." Maya raised an eyebrow, her calm demeanor unwavering. "A misunderstanding," she echoed. "Doctor, I stood in front of you, in pain, asking for help. Your response was to dismiss me without even asking what was wrong. Do you call that respect?" The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The staff watched with bated breath, many of them secretly rooting for Maya. Dr. Armin hesitated, his mind racing for an explanation. I thought you might not be able to afford the treatment," he admitted reluctantly. "And that's exactly the problem," Maya replied, her voice firm. "You assume my worth based on appearances. But what about the people who genuinely can't afford your services? Do they not deserve care?" Dr. Armin opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Maya continued, her tone softening just slightly. "Doctor, you're skilled, no doubt about that. But what good is skill without compassion? Medicine is not a business of exclusion, it's a calling to heal." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, Dr. Armin seemed to falter. He looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "I never thought about it that way," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "That's why I'm here, to change the way we think about healthcare. Starting today, this clinic will operate under new guidelines. Every patient, regardless of their financial status, will be treated with dignity and care. And you, Dr. Armin, have a choice to make." The room collectively held its breath as she continued. "You can either embrace these changes and prove that you're the kind of doctor this community needs, or you can step aside. The decision is yours." Dr. Armin's face was a mixture of shame and realization. For the first time in years, he was being forced to confront not just his actions but the values that had driven them. Maya turned to the staff, her voice carrying warmth and resolve. "To everyone here, I want you to know this: you are part of something bigger than yourselves. Together, we can build a clinic that truly serves the people. Let's make that happen." As she walked out of the room, the staff erupted into quiet murmurs of approval. Dr. Armin remained rooted in place, grappling with the weight of her words. The next step in this story will reveal whether Dr. Armin can rise to the challenge or let his ego pull him down. Stick around, because the transformation ahead is as inspiring as it is unexpected. That evening, long after the clinic had closed, Dr. Armin sat alone in his office. The lights were dim, and the silence felt heavier than usual. Maya's words echoed in his mind: "Medicine is not a business of exclusion, it's a calling to heal." He looked around the room at the plaques on his walls, the framed degrees, and the accolades he had worked so hard to achieve. Once, these symbols had filled him with pride. Now, they felt hollow. He realized he had spent years building a reputation, but at what cost? Had he forgotten why he became a doctor in the first place? Dr. Armin thought back to his early days in medical school. He had entered the field with a passion for helping people, inspired by stories of doctors who saved lives against all odds. Somewhere along the way, that passion had been overshadowed by ambition and a desire for prestige. He picked up a photo from his desk, a picture of himself as a young intern, smiling alongside a mentor who had once told him, "A doctor's greatest tool isn't their scalpel, it's their empathy." The memory stung. When had he stopped believing that? For the first time in years, Dr. Armin felt vulnerable. He realized that Maya hadn't come to humiliate him. She had come to challenge him to be better. The choice she had given him wasn't just about his career, it was about his character. The next morning, he made a decision. If he was going to continue practicing medicine, he would do it with the integrity he had once admired in others. He didn't know how the staff or even Maya would react, but he knew he had to try. Keep watching, because what Dr. Armin does next will show whether a heart set in its ways can truly change. The transformation ahead is a testament to the power of humility and second chances. The following week, the atmosphere in the clinic shifted. There was a palpable sense of anticipation as Maya's new policies began to take effect. The staff had already received the memo about the changes, but now it was time for them to be implemented in real life. Maya's vision for the clinic was clear: no patient, regardless of their financial situation, would ever be turned away again. Maya visited the clinic that morning to observe the changes firsthand. Dr. Armin had already begun to treat patients with a newfound humility, taking extra care with those who were previously overlooked. His interactions were warmer, his tone kinder. There was a visible difference in how he carried himself. He no longer saw his patients as clients, but as people. However, Maya wasn't just there to witness the change. She had more to offer. She gathered the staff for a meeting in the break room, where she laid out her plans for the future. "We will be instituting a sliding scale for fees, so that even those who can't afford full treatment will have access to care. We will also be partnering with local charities to provide medical assistance for those in need. But most importantly, we will make sure that every patient who walks through these doors feels seen, heard, and respected," Maya said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. The staff nodded, inspired by her leadership. Even Dr. Armin, who had been skeptical at first, felt a shift within himself. This was no longer about prestige or recognition. It was about something far more important: making a difference in people's lives. Maya turned to Dr. Armin. "I'm giving you the opportunity to prove that you can be the kind of doctor this community needs. If you're willing to put in the work, I'm willing to support you." Dr. Armin, for the first time in a long time, looked at her with genuine gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply. "I won't let you down." Maya smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "I know you won't, but remember, this isn't just about changing the clinic. It's about changing the way we think about healthcare. We're all in this together." The meeting ended with a renewed sense of purpose. Maya's leadership had sparked a transformation not just in the clinic, but in the hearts of everyone who worked there. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time, Dr. Armin felt ready to be part of it. Stay with us, because this is only the beginning. The true impact of Maya's vision is about to unfold, and it's going to be something truly remarkable. As months went by, the clinic's transformation became a beacon of hope in the community. What had once been a place where only the privileged received care was now a model for accessible healthcare, showing that change was possible when compassion led the way. But Maya's vision didn't stop with her clinic. Word of the clinic's success spread throughout the city, and soon, other medical institutions began to take notice. Some were skeptical, but many were inspired by the impact Maya's policies had on both patient care and the community. Hospitals, doctors' offices, and clinics across the city started implementing similar changes, adjusting their fee structures and ensuring that more people had access to affordable care. Dr. Armin, once a skeptic himself, became a vocal advocate for the changes. He traveled to other clinics, sharing his experience and encouraging other doctors to rethink their approach to patient care. Healthcare is not just about curing illness, he would say in his speeches. It's about treating people with dignity, no matter who they are or how much they can pay. In the wake of the clinic's success, Maya's organization also saw a surge in support. Donations and volunteers flooded in, eager to help her expand her mission. With new funding, Maya was able to create even more programs to provide free healthcare to underserved communities, ensuring that no one was left behind. But for Maya, the most fulfilling part of the transformation was seeing the difference it made in people's lives. She met with patients who had once been turned away from Dr. Armin's clinic, and they shared their stories of how the changes had impacted them. Some were able to receive life-saving treatments, while others simply felt seen for the first time. One woman, who had been ignored by Dr. Armin during her initial visit, approached Maya one day. "You don't know what this clinic has done for me," she said, tears in her eyes. "I've been struggling with chronic pain for years, but I couldn't afford the treatment. Now, I'm getting the care I need. I can't thank you enough." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's not just me," she replied. "It's all of us. We're changing the system together." As Maya stood in the waiting room, watching patients come and go, she felt a quiet pride. She knew that the work wasn't done. There was still much to be done to ensure that every person had access to the care they deserved. But the ripple effect of change had begun, and it was only getting stronger. The story of Dr. Armin and Maya Singh was more than just a tale of one doctor's redemption. It was a reminder that change is possible, even in the most unlikely places. When people stand together, driven by empathy and a commitment to doing what's right, they can create a future where healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And this was just the beginning. The journey toward a more equitable healthcare system was far from over. But with Maya's leadership and Dr. Armin's transformation, the future was brighter than ever. As months went by, the clinic's transformation became a beacon of hope in the community. What had once been a place where only the privileged received care was now a model for accessible healthcare, showing that change was possible when compassion led the way. But Maya's vision didn't stop with her clinic. Word of the clinic's success spread throughout the city, and soon, other medical institutions began to take notice. Some were skeptical, but many were inspired by the impact Maya's policies had on both patient care and the community. Hospitals, doctors' offices, and clinics across the city started implementing similar changes, adjusting their fee structures and ensuring that more people had access to affordable care. Dr. Armin, once a skeptic himself, became a vocal advocate for the changes. He traveled to other clinics, sharing his experience and encouraging other doctors to rethink their approach to patient care. Healthcare is not just about curing illness, he would say in his speeches. It's about treating people with dignity, no matter who they are or how much they can pay. In the wake of the clinic's success, Maya's organization also saw a surge in support. Donations and volunteers flooded in, eager to help her expand her mission. With new funding, Maya was able to create even more programs to provide free healthcare to underserved communities, ensuring that no one was left behind. But for Maya, the most fulfilling part of the transformation was seeing the difference it made in people's lives. She met with patients who had once been turned away from Dr. Armin's clinic, and they shared their stories of how the changes had impacted them. Some were able to receive life-saving treatments, while others simply felt seen for the first time. One woman, who had been ignored by Dr. Armin during her initial visit, approached Maya one day. "You don't know what this clinic has done for me," she said, tears in her eyes. "I've been struggling with chronic pain for years, but I couldn't afford the treatment. Now, I'm getting the care I need. I can't thank you enough." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's not just me," she replied. "It's all of us. We're changing the system together." As Maya stood in the waiting room, watching patients come and go, she felt a quiet pride. She knew that the work wasn't done. There was still much to be done to ensure that every person had access to the care they deserved. But the ripple effect of change had begun, and it was only getting stronger. The story of Dr. Arman and Maya Singh was more than just a tale of one doctor's redemption. It was a reminder that change is possible, even in the most unlikely places. When people stand together, driven by empathy and a commitment to doing what's right, they can create a future where healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And this was just the beginning. The journey toward a more equitable healthcare system was far from over. But with Maya's leadership and Dr. Arman's transformation, the future was brighter than ever. As the camera zoomed out, capturing the bustling clinic in all its new, vibrant energy, Maya stood by the reception desk, watching the patients and staff interact with a sense of fulfillment. The walls of the clinic, once cold and sterile, now seemed to hum with warmth, and the laughter of children filled the air as they sat with their families. It was a sight to behold the very heart of the change they had fought for. Maya turned to Dr. Arman, who was busy consulting a patient with a newfound care and attentiveness. She smiled, knowing that the journey they had begun was one that would continue to grow and inspire others. The transformation had been hard, but it was worth it, and it was only just the beginning. As the camera pulled back further, Maya's voice echoed in the background. "If you believe in change, in the power of empathy, and in a healthcare system that truly serves everyone, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Join us in spreading the word together. We can make a difference." The screen flashed with a final message: "Together, we heal. Together, we change the world." Stay tuned for more inspiring stories. And remember, real change begins with one small act of kindness. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the movement.